Luis Ortiz says he expects to return to action on the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury undercard on December 1st. Now, there is a rumor going around. This is a pretty unsubstantiated rumor. It really is just way out there. So if you guys want to leave it and put no stock in it at all, that's perfectly cool. All right. But there is a rumor that's floating around that I've heard from a couple different people now that Luis Ortiz might actually fight Joyce on the undercard of Wilder versus Fury. Now, the only reason that I'm even talking about this way out there rumor is because Joyce has expressed a desire to face top 10 heavyweights. Even though he's only had how many fights now? 4 or 5 fights, Joyce? He has expressed the desire to face top 10 heavyweights. In fact, he's called out people like Jarrell Miller, for example, who's a top 10 heavyweight. So I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if this fight actually did happen, if this rumor did turn out to be true. Because of, as I say, the fact that Joyce has expressed his desire to face top 10 heavyweights before. I have to imagine, though, that very few people would be picking Joyce to beat Luis Ortiz because of what Ortiz has done so far in the pro game, because of his experience in the pro game, and his equal experience to Joyce in terms of the number of fights he's had. In fact, I'm sure he's had more fights than Joyce as an amateur. So the equal experience in the amateur, if not more. Although Joyce was in the Olympics and he was an Olympic silver medalist, and Luis Ortiz never got close to an Olympic silver medal. I don't believe he was ever even in the Olympics. Correct me if I'm wrong. He certainly never medaled at any Olympics. And Luis Ortiz was the weight division below Joyce when he was an amateur. Obviously, they were amateurs at different times, but comparing their amateur careers, Luis Ortiz was a heavyweight in the amateurs, which is the equivalent of cruiserweight as a professional, whereas Joyce was a super heavyweight throughout the entirety of his amateur career. He's a very, very big man, much bigger than Luis Ortiz. Now, there might be some people out there who do think that Joyce might be able to pull off an upset against a Luis Ortiz. And if he did, wow, that really would catapult Joyce right up into the upper echelons of the heavyweight division. It would massively increase his market value, and he would probably be in some very, very big fights after that. You know, particularly if he can get some kind of serious following in the UK. I know he's kind of based in the US at the moment, and I'm not sure how that's going to work out for him in terms of building a fan base and his market value and stuff like that. I'm not sure how that's going to go, because in the UK, that's where you really build yourself as a brand as a UK fighter. You know, I know Amir Khan based himself in the UK early on. And then he exported that brand to the United States and built it more in the United States by facing top fighters in the US, then returned to the UK later on. But with the heavyweight division, most of the top fighters are in the UK. Most of the fighters who are making the big purses are in the UK. So, again, I'm not sure how that's going to go for Joyce in the US. It remains to be seen. US heavyweight boxing is making a resurgence, though. So let's not act as though there's no hope for US heavyweight boxing. There is. We'll just have to see how it goes. But anyway, Luis Ortiz on the undercard of Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, or Wilder Fury. Yeah. Let's see who he's going to end up fighting. Hopefully it's somebody decent, even if it isn't Joyce. We'd like to see Luis Ortiz in a relevant fight. He is an old man, though. He's getting up there in age, and he might be in a situation where he wants to come back against somebody a little easier rather than being flung straight back into a tough fight. But as a selfish fan, obviously, my preference from an entertainment standpoint would be to see Luis Ortiz in a real fight. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, people. It's happening. I'm out. For those of you who are interested in topics outside of boxing, controversial topics even, you might want to check me out on Patreon. Today's podcast, which I've just uploaded, is right here. People are leaving comments already. And the topics covered, it's an hour and 26 minutes long. And I'm covering the topics of black men and white women, dating single mums. And in that section of the podcast where I'm talking about dating single mums, I'll talk about my personal experience of dating a couple single mums in the past. and also the effects of social media, the effects that social media is having on the younger generation especially. So I'll be covering all that in today's podcast, which is just uploaded 27th of September. And as far as Patreon in general, I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts a month. As you can see, quite a lot of them are lengthy podcasts, sometimes over an hour long. This is another one, Sexual Liberalism, Democracy, Religion, and Psychopathy was the previous one that I did on Tuesday. And, I cover a whole heap of other stuff. Q&A sessions and even Eminem rap beef with MGK, all kinds of controversial topics, which I couldn't cover on YouTube without having strikes against my channel, demonetization, and all kinds of other stuff. So I'm able to do it on Patreon. So check me out on Patreon, even talking about Alex Jones and, all kinds of other stuff. So check me out on Patreon. There is literally hundreds of hours at this point. There must be hundreds of hours of content on Patreon. You don't just get to access my new podcasts, which I upload twice a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday. You also get to access my entire back catalog of previous podcasts, which includes my highly acclaimed, I think it's fair to say, Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Yeah, you just go to my page, my Patreon page, and you type into the search box, Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer, and you'll hear that series. And, you make up your own mind as to whether it's as good as people say it is. There's that. And there's also, as I say, the weekly topical podcast, which I do, the live Q&A sessions, all that kind of stuff. As you see here, it says on my Patreon page, Hatman is creating podcasts for independent minds and critical thinkers. And that is primarily what I do. But from time to time, I will talk about music as well. That's another thing as well. I've got my music up on Patreon. A lot of you may not know that I used to make music back in the days. When I was younger, I used to rap and stuff like that. And apparently I was quite good. It's not me saying this. Let other people decide whether I was good or not. My music is accessible there on Patreon. It's all part of the back catalog. So anyway, like I say, check me out on Patreon if you're interested in hearing me talk about stuff outside of boxing. Yeah, it's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.